The wagon wheels kicked up red dust as Rosemary Fletcher stood on the auction block for the second time in her life, her father's calloused hand gripping her shoulder like she was cattle being sold at market. She was 21 years old, and the shame burning through her chest felt worse than the scorching Nevada sun beating down on Rhyolite's Main Street in the summer of 1907. "Gentlemen, you know the deal," her father Raymond Fletcher hollered to the small crowd of miners and drifters gathered below. "My daughter here needs a husband, and I need cash money. $400 and she's yours. She can cook, clean, and she's got all her teeth." Rosemary's eyes stung with humiliation, but she refused to let tears fall. This was the second time her father had done this to her. The first time, 3 months ago, a prospector named William had paid $300 for her. She had gone with him to his claim in the hills, terrified but resigned to her fate. But William had died 2 weeks later when a mine shaft collapsed on him, and her father had dragged her back to town, furious that his investment had been wasted. Now he was selling her again, this time for a higher price. The crowd murmured, but most men looked away or shuffled their feet. Buying a woman like livestock did not sit right with many of them, even in a rough mining town like Rhyolite. Rosemary scanned the faces, seeing pity in some, disgust in others, and predatory interest in a few that made her stomach turn. Then her gaze landed on a tall cowboy standing at the back of the crowd. He wore dusty work clothes, a weather-beaten hat, and had dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. His jaw was set hard, and his eyes, a striking shade of gray-blue, were fixed on her father with an expression of barely contained anger. Something about the way he looked at the situation, not at her like she was property, but at her father like he was committing a crime, made her heart skip. "Come now, surely one of you wants a wife without all the courting hassle," her father pressed, his voice taking on a desperate edge. He needed money for his drinking habit and gambling debts, Rosemary knew. That was all she had ever been to him since her mother died 5 years ago, a means to an end. "I will give you 200, a grizzled miner called out, and Rosemary's blood went cold. She recognized him. Tom Sanders. He had a reputation for cruelty, and his last wife had disappeared under suspicious circumstances. "Now, Tom, I said 400, her father replied, though Rosemary could hear the consideration in his voice. 300 then. That is all I got." Rosemary's father was about to agree when the tall cowboy stepped forward. $500, he said, his voice deep and steady, cutting through the murmuring crowd like a knife. Everyone turned to look at him. Her father's eyes lit up with greed. 500. "Well now, that is more like it. You got that kind of money, son." The cowboy reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a worn leather wallet. Rosemary watched as he counted out bills, his jaw clenched tight. She could see from the thinness of the wallet that this was likely everything he had, every dollar he had saved. 500, the cowboy repeated, holding out the money. "But I am not buying her. I am buying her freedom. Once you take this money, you will sign a document stating you have no claim to your daughter ever again. You will not sell her a third time, a fourth time, or ever contact her. Do we have an agreement?" Her father hesitated, suspicion crossing his weathered face. "What is it to you?" "Do we have an agreement?" the cowboy repeated, his voice harder now. The lure of $500 won out over Raymond Fletcher's curiosity. "Fine, fine. Give me the money and I will sign whatever you want." 20 minutes later, Rosemary stood outside the land office free. The document had been drawn up, signed, and witnessed. Her father had already disappeared into the nearest saloon with his blood money, and she stood next to a complete stranger who had just spent his life savings on her. "Thank you," she managed to say, her voice shaking. I do not know why you did that, but thank you. I will find a way to pay you back, I swear it." The cowboy looked at her for the first time, really looked at her, and his expression softened. "My name is Daniel Zimmerman, and you do not owe me anything. What your father did was wrong. No person should be sold like property. Still, $500. Rosemary trailed off, overwhelmed. "I have been saving for 3 years to buy a small ranch," Daniel said quietly. "But I can save again. You needed help now." Rosemary felt tears finally escape down her cheeks. "I am Rosemary. Rosemary Fletcher, though I suppose I can choose a different name now if I want." A hint of a smile touched Daniel's lips. "Rosemary is a good name. Do you have anywhere to go? Family besides your father?" She shook her head. "No one. My mother died years ago. I have been working at the boarding house when my father allowed it, but he always took my wages." Daniel was quiet for a moment, clearly thinking. "I work at the Double Bar Ranch about 5 miles outside town. They are always looking for help in the kitchen and with laundry. The owner, Mrs. Patterson, is a decent woman. I could ask if she has work for you, maybe a place to stay in the bunkhouse." Hope fluttered in Rosemary's chest, fragile as a bird's wing. "Would you? I am a hard worker, I promise. I can earn my keep." "Then let us go talk to her," Daniel said. "I rode in this morning to pick up supplies. We can take the wagon back together." As they walked to where Daniel had left the ranch wagon, Rosemary studied him from the corner of her eye. He was probably around 25 or 26, she guessed, with strong hands that spoke of years of hard work. There was a kindness in his face that she had rarely seen in men, especially in a place like Rhyolite where silver fever made people mean and desperate. "Why did you really do it?" she asked as he helped her up onto the wagon seat. $500 is a fortune. You could have just walked away." Daniel climbed up beside her and took the reins. For a long moment he did not answer, guiding the 2 horses through town and onto the dusty road that led into the desert hills. Finally, he spoke. "My mother was sold by her father to pay a debt when she was 19. The man who bought her was cruel. She tried to run away several times, and each time he beat her. My father was a ranch hand who worked on that man's property. He saw what was happening, and one night he helped my mother escape. They ran away together, came out west, got married. I grew up hearing that story, knowing that my father gave up everything to save a woman he barely knew because it was the right thing to do." Rosemary's throat tightened. "What happened to them?" "They had 10 good years together before my father was killed in a stampede. My mother raised me and my 2 sisters alone after that. She died last year from pneumonia." Daniel's voice was rough with old grief. "Before she passed, she made me promise that if I ever saw someone in need the way she had been, I would help. So when I saw you standing up there, saw the fear in your eyes, I heard my mother's voice telling me what to do." "I am sorry about your parents," Rosemary said softly. "They sound like they were wonderful people." They were. They rode in companionable silence for a while. The Nevada landscape stretched around them, harsh and beautiful in equal measure. Rocky hills rose in the distance, and scrub brush dotted the red earth. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. "Where are your sisters now?" Rosemary asked. "Mary married a shopkeeper in Carson City. She has 2 little ones. Elizabeth went back east to become a teacher. We write letters when we can." Daniel glanced at her. "Do you have any siblings?" "A brother, but he left when I was 12. Said he could not stand our father anymore. I have not heard from him since." Rosemary twisted her hands in her lap. "I used to be angry at him for leaving me behind, but now I understand. He was only 16. There was nothing he could have done." "You survived," Daniel said. "That took strength." The words, simple as they were, touched something deep inside Rosemary. No one had ever acknowledged what she had endured, the quiet strength it took to wake up each day in her father's house, to endure his anger and his neglect, to keep hoping for something better. The Double Bar Ranch came into view as they crested a hill. It was a sprawling operation with a large main house, several barns, a bunkhouse, and numerous corrals. Cattle dotted the surrounding pastures, and Rosemary could see ranch hands working in the distance. Daniel drove the wagon to the main house and helped Rosemary down. "Wait here," he said. "I will go talk to Mrs. Patterson." Rosemary stood in the yard, suddenly nervous. What if Mrs. Patterson said no? What if she had heard about Raymond Fletcher selling his daughter and wanted nothing to do with her? The shame of it washed over her again. But Daniel emerged from the house 5 minutes later with an older woman beside him. Mrs. Patterson was in her 50s, with gray, streaked brown hair pulled back in a practical bun and shrewd but not unkind eyes. "Miss Fletcher," Mrs. Patterson said, looking Rosemary up and down. "Daniel tells me you need work and a place to stay." "Yes, madam," Rosemary said, standing straight. "I am a good cook and I know how to manage a household. I can do laundry, mending, cleaning, anything you need. I will work hard." "Daniel also told me what your father did, Mrs. Patterson said bluntly. "Selling his own daughter like chattel, disgraceful. The first time was bad enough, but twice." She shook her head. "You are welcome here, child. I can use help in the house. My regular girl just left to get married and I have been doing everything myself. You can stay in the small room off the kitchen. Wages are $20 a month plus room and board." Relief flooded through Rosemary so intensely her knees nearly buckled. "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. Thank you so much. Come on, then. Let me show you where you will be staying. Daniel, you get those supplies put away before supper." As Mrs. Patterson led Rosemary into the house, Rosemary glanced back at Daniel. He tipped his hat to her, and she saw something warm in his eyes that made her heart flutter in a way she had never experienced before. The room Mrs. Patterson showed her was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the ranch. After sleeping on a moth-eaten mattress in her father's decrepit shack for so many years, it looked like paradise. "Supper is at 6, Mrs. Patterson said. "That gives you an hour to settle in. Then I will show you around the kitchen and we can discuss your duties. The ranch hands eat in the bunkhouse, but I feed my house staff and the foreman in the main house. You will take your meals with us." "Thank you," Rosemary said again, unable to find words adequate to express her gratitude. When Mrs. Patterson left, Rosemary sat on the bed and let herself cry, really cry for the first time in years. But these were not tears of despair. They were tears of relief, of hope, of the overwhelming realization that her life might finally be changing for the better. That evening at supper, Rosemary met the others who ate in the main house. There was Mr. Patterson, a quiet man who clearly adored his wife, and the foreman, a gruff older cowboy named Jack. Daniel was there too, and Rosemary learned that he lived in a small cabin on the ranch property, a privilege he had earned after 5 years of dedicated work. "Daniel is the best horse trainer in the territory," Mrs. Patterson said proudly. "We are lucky to have him. Every ranch around here tries to steal him away." Daniel looked uncomfortable with the praise. "I just have a way with horses is all. He is being modest," Mr. Patterson added. "He can gentle the wildest Mustang and turn it into a reliable working horse. It is a real gift." Over the next few weeks, Rosemary settled into life at the Double Bar Ranch. She worked hard, rising before dawn to help prepare breakfast for the household, and spending her days cooking, cleaning, and managing the domestic side of the ranch. Mrs. Patterson was demanding but fair, and for the first time in her life, Rosemary felt appreciated for her work. She also saw Daniel nearly every day. He often came to the house for meals, and sometimes she would catch glimpses of him working with the horses in the corrals. She found herself drawn to the window whenever she heard his voice, watching as he moved with patient confidence around even the most skittish animals. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after she had arrived, Rosemary was hanging laundry in the yard when she heard a commotion from the corrals. She looked over to see a large black horse rearing and bucking, clearly terrified. Two ranch hands were struggling to control it, and one of them looked close to being trampled. Daniel appeared seemingly from nowhere, vaulting over the corral fence. "Let him go," he shouted. "Get back." The ranch hands released the rope and scrambled to safety. The horse, freed from restraint, continued to buck and spin, kicking up clouds of dust. Daniel did not approach. Instead, he simply stood in the center of the corral, completely still, and waited. Rosemary held her breath, sure the horse was going to charge him. But gradually the animal's panic began to subside. It circled the corral, keeping distance between itself and Daniel, but its movements became less frantic. Daniel remained motionless, his posture relaxed, non-threatening. After several minutes, the horse stopped moving altogether. It stood at the far side of the corral, sides heaving, watching Daniel with wild eyes. Very slowly, Daniel turned his back on the horse and walked to the fence. He picked up a bucket of water and poured some into a trough, then moved away again. The horse watched but did not approach. "He will come when he is ready," Daniel said to the ranch hands who were watching from outside the fence. "He has been mistreated. He needs to learn that not all humans will hurt him." One of the hands shook his head. "That horse is a killer, Daniel. Mr. Patterson should just cut his losses and shoot it." "No animal is born mean," Daniel said firmly. "Something made him this way. Give me 2 weeks with him." Rosemary found herself walking over to the corral. Daniel saw her approach and gave her a slight smile. "That horse looks dangerous," she said. "He is scared," Daniel corrected. "There is a difference. Someone beat him, probably repeatedly. Now he thinks every human is a threat." Rosemary looked at the trembling horse and felt a pang of recognition. "How do you help him trust again?" "Patience. Consistency. Show him over and over that I will not hurt him, that he is safe. Eventually he will start to believe it." Daniel's eyes met hers. "It works with horses." "I imagine it works with people too." There was something in the way he said it, gentle and understanding, that made Rosemary realize he was not just talking about the horse. He saw her fear too, her wariness, and he was telling her in his quiet way that she was safe now. "Would you like to watch?" Daniel asked. "I am going to work with him every day. You are welcome to come by if you have time." "I would like that," Rosemary said softly. Over the following days, Rosemary began to carve out time in her schedule to watch Daniel work with the black horse he had named Shadow. It was mesmerizing to observe. Daniel never rushed, never forced. He simply showed up every day and was present with the animal, slowly building trust through patient consistency. On the 3rd day, Shadow took water from the trough while Daniel was in the corral. On the 5th day, the horse approached close enough to sniff Daniel's outstretched hand before skittering away. By the end of the 1st week, Shadow was allowing Daniel to touch his neck. "You have a gift," Rosemary told Daniel one evening as they walked back from the corrals together. The sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of purple and rose. "I just pay attention," Daniel said. "Every horse has a different story, different fears, different needs. You have to meet them where they are. Is that why you paid attention to me?" The words were out before Rosemary could stop them. "Is that why you helped me? Because you saw I was scared like Shadow?" Daniel stopped walking and turned to face her. "I helped you because what was happening to you was wrong. But yes, I saw your fear. I also saw your strength." You were standing up there with your head high, refusing to be broken even though you had every right to be. That took courage." Rosemary felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I did not feel courageous. I felt terrified." "Courage is not the absence of fear," Daniel said. "It is moving forward despite it." They stood there in the fading light, and Rosemary felt something shift between them. She had been aware of Daniel since the day he bought her freedom, grateful and admiring from a distance. But now, looking into his kind gray-blue eyes, she felt something deeper stirring. Something that made her heart race and her breath catch. "Daniel, She started, then faltered, not knowing how to put words to what she was feeling. "I know," he said quietly. "I feel it too. You do, from that first day, if I am being honest." Daniel reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture achingly tender. "But I did not want to push you. You have been through so much, and you deserve time to heal, to figure out what you want without pressure." "What if what I want is you?" Rosemary whispered. Daniel's expression transformed, hope and joy breaking across his face like sunrise. "Then I would be the luckiest man alive." He leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, but Rosemary did not want to. When his lips met hers, soft and sweet, she felt like she was finally, truly free. Not just free from her father's control, but free to choose her own path, her own happiness, her own love. The kiss was gentle and brief, but it left Rosemary feeling warm all over. When they pulled apart, Daniel was smiling. "I have never courted a woman before," he admitted. "So I might not be very good at it, but I would like to try if you will have me." "I have never been courted," Rosemary said, "so I suppose we can figure it out together." From that evening on, Daniel and Rosemary began walking out together. It started with evening strolls around the ranch after supper, talking and learning about each other. Daniel told her about growing up on various ranches across the West, about his father's legacy of kindness and his mother's quiet strength. Rosemary shared stories of her childhood before her mother died, when life had been happier, and her dreams of someday having a real home and family. Mrs. Patterson approved of the courtship wholeheartedly. "Daniel is a good man," she told Rosemary one morning as they kneaded bread dough. "One of the best I have known. You could not do better." "I know," Rosemary said, unable to keep the smile from her face. "Sometimes I cannot believe this is real, that I am here, that he cares for me." "Believe it, dear. You deserve happiness." As summer turned to autumn, the relationship between Rosemary and Daniel deepened. They spent every free moment together. Daniel taught her to ride, patiently instructing her on one of the ranch's gentler horses, until she could ride with confidence. Rosemary packed picnic lunches, and they would ride out into the desert hills, finding quiet spots to eat and talk and share soft kisses that grew more passionate as time went on. Shadow, the black horse, had been fully gentled by this point and was one of the most reliable mounts on the ranch. Mr. Patterson had been so impressed with Daniel's work that he gave him a raise and started sending him to neighboring ranches to train their difficult horses as well, earning extra money for both Daniel and the ranch. One cool October evening, Daniel asked Rosemary to come with him to his cabin after supper. She went, her heart pounding with anticipation and a little nervousness. She had never been inside his home before. The cabin was small but tidy, with a fireplace, a simple bed, a table and chairs, and a few personal possessions that spoke of Daniel's life. A photograph of his parents hung on one wall. Books lined a small shelf. Everything was clean and organized. "I wanted to show you something," Daniel said, reaching up to a high shelf and pulling down a small wooden box. He opened it, and Rosemary saw it was full of coins and bills. "I have been saving again since I spent my ranch money on your freedom. It is not much yet, only $75, but I am earning extra now with the horse training." "Daniel, why are you showing me this?" He took her hands in his. "Because I want you to know that I am working towards something. I still plan to buy that ranch someday, a place of our own where we can build a life. It will take time, maybe a few more years of saving, but I am committed to it." He paused, his eyes searching hers. "I am committed to you, Rosemary. I love you." Tears sprang to Rosemary's eyes. "You love me." "I do. I think I started falling in love with you that day in Rhyolite, and every day since has only made me more certain." His thumbs brushed over her knuckles. "I know I should probably wait longer to say this, to make sure, but I have never been more sure of anything in my life. I want to marry you, Rosemary. I want to build that ranch with you, raise a family with you, grow old with you. I know I cannot offer you much right now, but I promise I will work every day to give you the life you deserve." Rosemary was crying now, but they were happy tears. "You already have given me everything. You gave me freedom, safety, a chance at a real life. And you gave me your love, which is worth more than all the ranches in the world." She squeezed his hands. "I love you too, Daniel. I think I have loved you since you stepped forward in that crowd and saw me as a person worth saving. Yes, I will marry you. Today, tomorrow, whenever you want. I am yours." Daniel pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply, a kiss full of promise and passion and profound relief. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "I want to do this properly," Daniel said. "I want to ask Mr. and Mrs. Patterson for permission to marry you on their property. I want to save up enough to buy you a ring. Will you give me a few months to do this right?" Rosemary smiled through her tears. "I will wait as long as you need." But Daniel did not make her wait long. By December, as winter settled over the Nevada desert, he had saved enough to purchase a simple gold band from the jeweler in Rhyolite. It was not fancy, but Rosemary loved it because it represented Daniel's hard work and commitment. Mr. and Mrs. Patterson were delighted to host the wedding on the ranch. Mrs. Patterson insisted on making Rosemary a new dress, a beautiful blue calico that made Rosemary feel like a princess. The wedding was planned for Christmas Day, and Mrs. Patterson invited neighboring ranchers and townsfolk to celebrate. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, Rosemary found herself happier than she had ever imagined possible. Sometimes she would pause in her work and marvel at how drastically her life had changed in just 6 months. She had gone from being sold like property, certain she would spend her life in misery, to being loved by a good man and planning a future full of hope. There was one shadow over her happiness, though. She had not seen or heard from her father since the day Daniel bought her freedom. Part of her worried that he would show up and cause trouble, but another part hoped he had simply taken his money and forgotten about her entirely. 2 weeks before the wedding, her worry proved justified. She was in town with Mrs. Patterson buying supplies when she saw Raymond Fletcher stumbling out of a saloon. He was thinner than she remembered, his face haggard and his clothes filthy. "Rosemary," he called when he spotted her. "Rosemary, girl, I need to talk to you." Mrs. Patterson stepped between them immediately. "You stay away from her, Raymond Fletcher. You have no rights to her anymore." "I am her father," Raymond slurred, clearly drunk even though it was only mid-afternoon. "She should help me." "I am down on my luck, need money." Rosemary's initial fear gave way to anger. "You sold me, twice. You gave up any claim to being my father when you treated me like property. I raised you, did not I? Put a roof over your head." Raymond took a step forward and Rosemary smelled the whiskey on his breath. "You owe me." "She owes you nothing," a firm voice said from behind them. Daniel had appeared, his expression hard as stone. "And you are going to leave now before I make you leave." Raymond looked at Daniel and seemed to recognize him. "You are the fool who paid $500 for her. I laughed about that for weeks. Best deal I ever made." "Get out of here," Daniel said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Right now." Perhaps Raymond saw something in Daniel's eyes that warned him not to push further, or perhaps he was too drunk to bother with a fight. Either way, he spat in the dirt at their feet and stumbled away, muttering curses. Rosemary was shaking. Daniel put his arm around her shoulders. "He cannot hurt you anymore. I know. I just hate that he still has the power to make me feel small and scared." "That feeling will fade," Mrs. Patterson said gently. "Every day you build your new life with Daniel, your father's hold on you will weaken. Eventually, he will just be a bad memory, nothing more." Rosemary nodded, trying to believe it. Daniel held her close as they finished their errands, his presence a constant comfort. By the time they returned to the ranch, she felt steadier. That night, Daniel asked her to take a walk with him despite the cold. He led her to a spot on a hill overlooking the ranch, where they could see the lights of the buildings twinkling below and the vast expanse of stars overhead. "I have been thinking," Daniel said, wrapping his coat around both of them to keep her warm. "After we are married, I want to start looking for land to buy. Mr. Patterson said he will keep me on here while we save up, but I want us to have something of our own." "Where would we look?" "There is good land further north near Tanapa, cheaper than around here and good for ranching. We could start small, just a few acres and some cattle, and build from there." He looked down at her, his face serious. "It would be hard work. We would be starting from nothing, building everything ourselves. But it would be ours. What do you think?" Rosemary thought about having her own home, a place where she would never have to fear being sold or controlled or hurt, a place where she and Daniel could raise children in safety and love. "I think it sounds perfect." Daniel kissed her forehead. "You are so brave, you know that. After everything you have been through, you still have hope, still believe in a better future. That amazes me." "I have hope because of you," Rosemary said. "You showed me that there are good people in the world, that love and kindness are real. Before you, I was just surviving. Now I am actually living." They stood there on that hill for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, planning their future under the winter stars. Christmas Day arrived cold but clear. Mrs. Patterson had decorated the main house with pine boughs and ribbons, and the smell of roasting turkey filled the air. Guests began arriving mid-morning, neighboring ranchers with their families, some townsfolk from Rhyolite, and even the local preacher who would perform the ceremony. Rosemary dressed in her new blue dress with trembling fingers. Mrs. Patterson helped her fix her hair, pinning it up and weaving in small white flowers she had somehow managed to obtain despite the winter season. "You look beautiful, dear," Mrs. Patterson said, her eyes misting. "Daniel is a lucky man." "I am the lucky one," Rosemary replied. When it was time, Rosemary walked out into the ranch's main room where everyone had gathered. Daniel stood at the front with the preacher, wearing his best suit, his dark hair neatly combed. When he saw her, his face lit up with such pure joy and love that Rosemary felt her heart might burst. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. Daniel's hands were steady as he slipped the gold band onto her finger, and his voice did not waver as he vowed to love and cherish her for all the days of his life. Rosemary's own voice shook with emotion as she made her promises to him, but she meant every word with her whole heart. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Daniel kissed her to the cheers and applause of everyone gathered. Rosemary kissed him back, tears of happiness streaming down her face, and knew that this was the moment her life truly began. The celebration that followed was joyful and boisterous. There was food and music and dancing. Rosemary had never experienced anything like it. She had certainly never been at the center of so much happiness and goodwill. People congratulated them warmly, and several ranch wives pulled her aside to offer advice and welcome her into their community. Late in the evening, as the party was winding down, Daniel took her hand. "Are you ready to go home, Mrs. Zimmerman?" Hearing her new name sent a thrill through her. "Yes, I am ready." They had decided to live in Daniel's cabin until they could buy their own property. It would be cramped, but neither of them cared. They just wanted to be together. That night, in the privacy of the cabin with firelight casting warm shadows on the walls, Daniel made love to Rosemary with such tenderness and care that she cried. He was patient and gentle, always making sure she was comfortable, that she wanted every touch and kiss. It was nothing like the fearful wedding night she had imagined during those dark days when she thought she would be sold to a cruel stranger. This was beautiful, an expression of the love they shared, a joining of two people who had found each other against all odds. Afterward, lying in Daniel's arms, Rosemary felt completely safe and cherished for the first time in her life. "Are you happy?" Daniel murmured, running his fingers through her hair. "I did not know it was possible to be this happy," Rosemary replied honestly. "I love you so much, Daniel." "I love you too. And I promise you, Rosemary, I will spend every day of my life making sure you never regret choosing me. I could never regret this. You saved me. You gave me everything." Winter passed into spring, and life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Rosemary continued to work for Mrs. Patterson, though now she went home to Daniel each night. They saved every penny they could, both of them working hard and living frugally. Daniel took on extra training jobs, sometimes traveling to distant ranches for a week or two at a time. Rosemary hated when he was gone, but she understood they were working toward their dream. By summer, they had saved $200. It was not enough for a ranch yet, but it was a start. They began seriously looking at properties around Tonopah, riding up on weekends to survey available land. It was on one of these trips in late July that they found it. A small parcel of 120 acres with a creek running through it, good grass for cattle, and a spectacular view of the surrounding mountains. The property had a small, run-down cabin on it that would need work, but the land was sound. The owner was asking $350. "We are still short," Daniel said, disappointment clear in his voice as they stood on the property. "By the time we save another $150, someone else will have bought it." Rosemary looked around at the land, imagining their future here. She could see it so clearly. Cattle grazing, a garden near the cabin, maybe children playing by the creek someday. "We have to try," she said. "Can we talk to the owner, see if he would be willing to negotiate or hold it for us?" The owner turned out to be an older man named Mr. Hendricks, who was moving back east to live with his daughter. When Daniel and Rosemary met with him and explained their situation, he was thoughtful. $200 now, and you can pay me the rest over the next year," he repeated. "That is a risk for me. We are good for it," Daniel said earnestly. "I can give you references from Mr. Patterson at the Double Bar Ranch, people in Rhyolite who know my reputation. I am a hard worker and I honor my debts." Mr. Hendricks studied them both for a long moment. "Why do you want this land so badly?" Daniel glanced at Rosemary, then back at Mr. Hendricks. "Because I want to build something lasting for my family. My father did not leave me much in the way of money or property, but he left me values and a strong work ethic. I want to create a legacy, a place my wife and I can build a life, raise children, maybe pass on to them someday. This land, it feels right. I cannot explain it better than that." "And you?" Mr. Hendricks asked, turning to Rosemary. "You are awfully young to be taking on a hardscrabble ranch life." Rosemary straightened. "I am not afraid of hard work, sir. I have been working hard my whole life. The difference is, this time I will be working for something that is mine and my husband's. That makes all the difference." Mr. Hendricks smiled. "My wife would have liked you. She had that same fire. He sighed. All right, I will take 200 now and hold the property. You have 1 year to pay the remaining $150. But I want it in writing, properly legal, and if you miss the deadline, the property and your deposit revert to me. Agreed. Agreed, Daniel said, shaking the older man's hand vigorously. Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. You will not regret this. They drew up the papers that very day with a lawyer in Tanapa, making everything official. As they rode back to the Double Bar Ranch that evening, both Daniel and Rosemary were giddy with excitement. We own land, Rosemary kept saying, marveling at it. We actually own land. Well, partially, Daniel corrected, but he was grinning. But yes, we are on our way. The next several months were a whirlwind of activity. Daniel and Rosemary spent every spare moment working on their new property. Daniel repaired the cabin, fixing the roof, replacing broken windows and reinforcing the walls. Rosemary cleaned and painted, turning the dingy interior into a cozy home. They bought a few head of cattle using credit at the local stockyard, with plans to build the herd gradually. Mr. and Mrs. Patterson were incredibly supportive, giving them time off to work on the ranch and even donating some furniture and supplies they no longer needed. The ranch hands at Double Bar helped when they could, and a community of support grew around Daniel and Rosemary's efforts. By October, they had moved into the cabin permanently, though Daniel still took training jobs to bring in cash. The work was exhausting. Some days Rosemary fell into bed so tired she could barely move. But it was good work, fulfilling work, and every improvement they made to the property filled her with pride. One evening in late November, as they were having supper in their cabin, Rosemary realized she needed to tell Daniel something important. She had suspected for a few weeks but had waited to be certain. Daniel, she said, setting down her fork, I have news. He looked up concerned. What is wrong? You have seemed tired lately. Are you feeling all right? I am fine. Better than fine, actually. She reached across the table and took his hand. I am going to have a baby. Daniel's eyes went wide. A baby? Truly, truly. I think the baby will come in late May or early June. For a moment Daniel just stared at her, processing. Then a huge grin spread across his face and he stood up, pulling her into his arms. A baby? Rosemary, that is wonderful. That is the best news. He pulled back to look at her, suddenly concerned. Are you feeling all right? Do you need to see a doctor? You should not be working so hard, not now. Rosemary laughed at his sudden protectiveness. I am fine. Women have babies all the time while working ranches. I will be careful, but I am not fragile. Still, you need to take care of yourself. We need to make sure you eat well, get enough rest. Daniel was already mentally reorganizing their life around this news. We should tell Mrs. Patterson. She will know what you need. They rode to the Double Bar Ranch the next day to share the news. Mrs. Patterson was thrilled and immediately took Rosemary under her wing, giving advice and making sure she had everything she needed. The older woman even knitted small blankets and clothes for the coming baby. December arrived, bringing with it the deadline for the final payment on their land. Daniel had been taking every training job offered, sometimes working from dawn until long after dark. Rosemary worried about him, about the exhaustion she saw in his face, but he insisted he was fine. 2 weeks before the deadline, they counted their savings. They had $120. They were still $30 short. I can take that job in Carson City, Daniel said. The one working with those wild horses. It pays $40, but I would be gone for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Rosemary's hand instinctively went to her small belly, not showing yet but precious nonetheless. Daniel, that is so long, I know, but it is our only option. Unless. He trailed off thinking, unless what? I could sell shadow. I have had several offers for him. The last one was for $60. No, Rosemary said immediately. That horse means too much to you. He was the first one we worked together on, remember? You cannot sell him. Our ranch means more, Daniel said quietly. If selling Shadow means we can make our final payment and secure our future, secure our child's future, then it is worth it. Rosemary knew he was right, even though it hurt to think of losing Shadow. The horse had become a symbol of so much for both of them. In the end, Daniel sold Shadow to a rancher from Goldfield who promised to give the horse a good home. The transaction brought in $65, more than enough to make their final payment with some left over. On the last day of December 1908, exactly 1 year after they were married, Daniel and Rosemary rode to Tonopah and paid off their land. When Mr. Hendricks handed over the deed, Rosemary felt tears of joy and relief. "You did it," Mr. Hendricks said, shaking both their hands. "I had faith in you young folks. Now you build that legacy." "We will," Daniel promised. That night, back in their cabin on their fully owned land, they celebrated quietly. It was New Year's Eve, the dawn of 1909, and they were landowners, soon to be parents and deeply in love. "This time last year we were newlyweds," Rosemary said, nestled against Daniel's side in bed. "I was so happy but also terrified. Everything was so new. And now I am still happy but not terrified. I know we can handle whatever comes. We have already overcome so much." Daniel kissed the top of her head. "We make a good team. The best team." Winter turned to spring, and Rosemary's belly grew round with their child. Daniel was endlessly fascinated by the changes in her body, often placing his hand on her stomach to feel the baby kick. He talked to the baby too, telling stories about his parents and promising to be a good father. "What do you want? A boy or a girl?" Rosemary asked one day as they worked together mending a fence. "Healthy," Daniel said immediately. "That is all I care about. Healthy baby, safe delivery. Boy or girl does not matter to me." "I think a boy," Rosemary said. "A son who looks just like you, or a daughter who looks like you," Daniel countered. Beautiful and strong, in the end their firstborn was indeed a son. He arrived on a warm June evening after a labor that lasted through the night and into the next day. Mrs. Patterson served as midwife, with Daniel pacing anxiously outside until he heard the baby's first cry. When he was finally allowed in, he found Rosemary exhausted but glowing, holding a tiny bundle with a shock of dark hair. "Meet your son," Rosemary said, her voice tired but full of joy. Daniel approached almost reverently, looking down at the tiny face of his child. The baby opened his eyes, revealing gray-blue irises just like his father's, and made a small sound. "Hello there," Daniel whispered, tears streaming down his face. "Hello, little one, I am your papa." "What should we name him?" Rosemary asked. They had discussed names for months but had never quite decided. Now, looking at their son, Daniel said, "Thomas, after my father, Thomas Fletcher Zimmerman." Rosemary smiled. "Thomas, that is perfect." Little Thomas was a good baby, healthy and content. He nursed well and slept reasonably, and both parents were completely besotted with him. Daniel proved to be a wonderful father, patient and gentle with his son. Rosemary often found him in the middle of the night, rocking Thomas and singing soft songs. Life on the ranch was demanding with a new baby, but they managed. Daniel continued training horses, now working mostly from their own property. Word of his skill had spread, and people came to him rather than him having to travel. This meant more time at home with his family, which was exactly what he wanted. Rosemary managed the household and took on the task of keeping the accounts for their small ranch. She discovered she had a head for numbers and business, and under her management, Their finances slowly but steadily improved. Thomas grew from a baby into a toddler, a sturdy little boy with his father's eyes and his mother's determination. He followed Daniel everywhere, his small legs struggling to keep up as his papa worked with the horses. When Thomas was 2, Rosemary found herself pregnant again. This time the baby, another boy they named James, arrived quickly on a cold February morning. James was different from Thomas, more active and demanding, keeping them on their toes. "Our hands are full now," Daniel said one night as he and Rosemary finally fell into bed after getting both boys to sleep. "They are," Rosemary agreed, "but I love it. I never imagined I could have this, a real family." Daniel pulled her close. "You deserve all of it and more." The years passed in a blur of hard work, small triumphs, and deep contentment. The ranch grew slowly but steadily. They added more cattle, built a proper barn, and expanded the cabin to accommodate their growing family. A daughter, Emma, arrived when Thomas was 5 and James was 3, bringing a different energy to the household with her sweet temperament and ready smile. Life was not without challenges. There were hard winters when they worried about the cattle, dry summers when the creek ran low, injuries and illnesses that frightened them. But they faced everything together, their love and partnership growing stronger with each passing year. Rosemary thought often of that day in Rhyolite when she had stood on the auction block, certain her life was over. The contrast between that terrified young woman and who she had become was stark. She was confident now, capable, the matriarch of a thriving family and a successful ranch. The shadows of her past had not disappeared entirely, but they had faded to the point where they rarely troubled her. She had seen her father one last time, several years after her marriage. She and Daniel had been in Rhyolite buying supplies when she spotted him on the street, even more decrepit than before. He had tried to approach her, likely to beg for money, but Daniel had stepped between them. "Walk away," Daniel had said firmly, and Raymond Fletcher had. He had looked at Rosemary, seen the strong, healthy woman standing beside her protective husband, and something in his expression had crumbled. He had walked away without a word, and Rosemary had never seen him again. She heard later that he had died that winter, frozen to death in an alley after a night of heavy drinking. She felt nothing when she heard the news. Not grief, not satisfaction, just a sense of finality. That chapter of her life was completely closed. One spring evening when Thomas was 10, James was 8, and Emma was 5, the family gathered on the porch of their ranch house to watch the sunset. Daniel had his arm around Rosemary, and the children were playing a game nearby. "Do you remember when we first saw this land?" Daniel asked. "What we imagined it could become." "I do," Rosemary said. "We have exceeded those dreams." "We have," Daniel agreed. He looked at their children, at the prosperous ranch around them, at his wife's contented face. "Sometimes I think about that day in Rhyolite when I spent every cent I had on a stranger's freedom. It seemed like such a foolish thing to do at the time." "Foolish?" Rosemary looked up at him. "My head told me it was foolish, but my heart knew differently. My heart knew I was saving the woman I would love for the rest of my life." He kissed her temple. "Best money I ever spent." Rosemary smiled. "You saved more than my freedom that day. You saved my life, Daniel. You gave me hope when I had none, love when I thought I would never experience it, a family and home when I never dreamed such things could be mine." "You saved me too," Daniel said. "I was just drifting before you, working and saving but not really living. You gave me purpose, a reason to build something meaningful. You gave me everything." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the Nevada sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Thomas called out something to his siblings, and Emma's laughter rang out clear and sweet. "We should think about getting more land," Rosemary said eventually. "The boys will need their own spreads someday if they want to stay in ranching." "Already planning for the future." "Always," Rosemary said. "That is what we do. We plan, we work, we build, together." "Together," Daniel echoed, pulling her closer. The years continued to roll by in a steady rhythm of seasons and growth. Thomas grew into a serious young man who loved working with cattle and had a natural affinity for ranch management. James, more adventurous, developed an interest in horse training like his father and showed remarkable talent for it. Emma grew into a bright, determined girl who loved learning and convinced her parents to let her attend the new school that had opened in Tonopah. Daniel and Rosemary watched their children grow with pride, an occasional bittersweet awareness that childhood was fleeting. But they took joy in every stage, every milestone, every moment of family life. When Thomas was 16, he asked his father about buying some adjacent land that had come up for sale. "I have been saving my wages," Thomas said earnestly. "And I figure if you and Mama could loan me the rest, I could buy it and work it while still helping here. Then someday it could be mine." Daniel looked at Rosemary and they shared a smile. Their son had inherited their work ethic and their vision. "We will help you," Daniel said. "But you will pay us back every cent with fair interest. That way you will appreciate what you have earned." "Yes, sir," Thomas said, grinning. "Thank you." That evening, after the children had gone to bed, Daniel and Rosemary sat together on their porch as they had done countless times over the years. "Our son is buying land," Daniel marveled. "When did he grow up?" "Gradually, then suddenly," Rosemary said. "Like everything else in life." "We have done well, have we not?" Daniel asked. "With the ranch, the children, all of it, we have done better than well. We have built something beautiful." Rosemary took his hand. "Do you ever regret it, spending that money, tying your life to mine when you could have had a simpler path?" Daniel turned to face her fully. "Rosemary Zimmerman, I have not regretted a single moment of our life together. Not one. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You and our children, this ranch, this life we have built, it is everything I ever wanted and more than I ever dreamed possible." "I love you," Rosemary said, her voice thick with emotion even after all these years together. "I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I will love you just as long," Daniel promised. They kissed as the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky. Two people who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built a love that had weathered every storm. When Emma was 18 and preparing to leave for a teacher's college in Carson City, the whole family gathered for a farewell dinner. It was a bittersweet occasion, proud but sad, marking another transition. "I am going to miss you all so much," Emma said, tears streaming down her face as she hugged each family member. "But I will write every week, I promise." "We will miss you too, sweetheart," Rosemary said, holding her daughter tight. "But we are so proud of you for pursuing your dreams." After Emma left, the ranch felt quieter. Thomas was living on his own land now, though he came by daily to work. James was 19 and talking about starting his own horse training operation. Rosemary and Daniel suddenly found themselves facing the reality of an empty nest. "It feels strange," Rosemary admitted one morning as she and Daniel had breakfast alone. "The house is so quiet." "They are living the lives we worked to give them," Daniel said. "That is a good thing, even if it feels lonely sometimes." "I know. I just miss the noise and chaos of having little ones around." Daniel smiled. "Give it a few years. Thomas is courting that girl from town, Sally. We might have grandchildren before you know it." The prediction proved accurate. Thomas married Sally 2 years later, and by the following autumn, Rosemary and Daniel welcomed their first grandchild, a baby boy named after his grandfather Daniel. Holding that tiny baby, Rosemary felt her heart expand in ways she had not known were possible. "A grandfather," Daniel said wonderingly, cradling his namesake. "I am a grandfather." "And I am a grandmother," Rosemary said, laughing. "When did we get old? We are not old. We are experienced." Daniel grinned at her. "And we are going to spoil this baby absolutely rotten." James married a year later, and Emma, after finishing her teaching education, met a kind young lawyer and got engaged. The family continued to grow and expand, the ranch prospering under Thomas's management, with Daniel serving as advisor and James's horse training business becoming renowned throughout the territory. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Daniel surprised Rosemary with a trip to San Francisco. It was the farthest either of them had ever traveled, and they spent a glorious week exploring the city, eating in fancy restaurants and staying in a proper hotel. "This is incredible," Rosemary said as they walked along the waterfront, holding hands like young sweethearts. "I never imagined seeing such things." "You deserve all of it," Daniel said. "You deserve the world." "I have the world," Rosemary said. "I have you, our children, our grandchildren, our life. What more could I possibly want?" On their last night in the city, they dressed up and went to a fine restaurant. Over dinner, they reminisced about their years together, laughing over memories and marveling at how far they had come. "You remember our wedding?" Rosemary asked. "How scared I was." "You did not look scared. You looked beautiful." "I was terrified," Rosemary admitted. "Not of you, but of everything being so new, so different from anything I had known. I kept thinking something would go wrong, that it was too good to be true. And now I know it is real. This life, this love, it is solid and true. We built it together day by day, year by year." She reached across the table and took his hand. "Thank you, Daniel, for seeing me when I was invisible, for saving me when I was lost, for loving me when I thought I was unlovable." "You were always lovable," Daniel said softly. "Always worthy. I just helped you see it." They returned to Nevada refreshed and renewed, ready to embrace the next chapter of their lives. Daniel, now in his 50s, began to slow down a bit, turning over more of the physical ranch work to his sons but remaining active in managing the business side. Rosemary, too, found herself with more free time and took up teaching reading to children in the community who did not have access to formal schooling. The ranch had grown substantially over the years. What had started as 120 acres was now over 1,000, with Thomas and James's adjacent properties adding even more to the family holdings. They employed several ranch hands and had become one of the most respected ranching operations in the region. One afternoon in late autumn, when Daniel was 60 and Rosemary was 56, they took a ride out to the original 120 acres where they had started. The old cabin was still there, though they had long since moved to a larger house. They had kept it maintained as a sort of shrine to their beginnings. "Look how small it is," Rosemary said, standing in front of the cabin. "We raised 3 children in there. We were young and had more energy then," Daniel said, dismounting and coming to stand beside her. "But I remember being happy here, so happy." They went inside, finding it just as they had left it. Simple furniture, a small fireplace, windows that looked out over the land they had built their empire on. "I was just thinking," Daniel said, "about that day in Rhyolite. About how $500 seemed like a fortune then, everything I had in the world." "It was everything you had," Rosemary said. "And I would do it again," Daniel said firmly, "without hesitation. Because that $500 bought me you and you gave me everything else. This ranch, our children, our grandchildren, a lifetime of love and partnership. That is the best investment any man could make. Rosemary felt tears prick her eyes. You are going to make me cry, and we are too old for me to be crying all the time. We are never too old for tears of happiness, Daniel said, pulling her into his arms. I love you, Rosemary. I have loved you for 27 years, and I will love you for whatever time we have left. And I love you, Rosemary said, holding him tight. You are my hero, my partner, my everything. They stood there in that small cabin where their life together had truly begun. Two people who had found each other against impossible odds and built something extraordinary through love, hard work, and unwavering faith in each other. As the sun set over their land, painting the Nevada desert in shades of gold and crimson, Daniel and Rosemary Zimmerman stood together, grateful for the journey they had shared and the legacy they had created. From an auction block in Rhyolite to a thriving ranch in Tonopah, from fear and desperation to love and prosperity, their story was one of redemption, hope, and the transformative power of choosing compassion over indifference. Their grandchildren would grow up hearing the story of how their grandfather had bought their grandmother's freedom with his life savings, how he had seen not property but a person in need, how one act of courage and kindness had changed the course of multiple lives. And those grandchildren would carry that legacy forward, understanding that true wealth was not measured in dollars but in love, family, and the courage to do what is right even when it costs everything. On a warm spring day several years later, Daniel and Rosemary celebrated their 30th anniversary surrounded by their children, their spouses, and 7 grandchildren. The party was held at the main ranch house, and people came from all over the region to celebrate with them. Thomas stood to give a toast. To my parents, he said, raising his glass, who taught us that family is everything, that hard work pays off, and that love can overcome any obstacle. They started with nothing but each other and built an empire. But more than that, they built a home full of love, a family bound by devotion, and a legacy that will last for generations. To Mama and Papa. To Mama and Papa. Everyone echoed, glasses raised. Daniel pulled Rosemary close and kissed her to the cheers of their assembled family. Still happy? He whispered. Deliriously, she whispered back. You, more than I can say. As the party continued around them, music playing and grandchildren laughing, Daniel and Rosemary slipped away for a quiet moment together. They walked to the hill where Daniel had proposed, where they had stood so many times over the years planning their future. We did it, Rosemary said, looking out over the ranch, the assembled people, the life they had built. We actually did it. We did, Daniel agreed. And it was worth every struggle, every sacrifice, every hard day. What do you think happens next? Rosemary asked. We are getting older. What does the next chapter look like? More of this, Daniel said simply. More time with family, watching our grandchildren grow, maybe even meeting some great-grandchildren. More quiet evenings on the porch, more moments like this, just you and me, grateful for what we have. That sounds perfect. They stood together as the sun began to set, as it had set countless times over their 30 years of marriage. But the beauty of it never faded, just as their love for each other never dimmed. They had been through so much together, hardship and triumph, fear and joy, loss and abundance. And through it all they had held onto each other, their bond growing stronger with each passing year. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Daniel took Rosemary's hand. Ready to go back to the party? In a minute, Rosemary said. I just want to stay here a little longer with you, appreciating this moment. As long as you want, Daniel said, pulling her close. And there they stood, a cowboy and the woman whose freedom he had purchased with his savings. Two people who had defied the odds and created a love story for the ages. Their journey had begun in the dusty streets of Rhyolite, Nevada, with an act of courage that cost everything but gave even more in return. And it would continue day by day, season by season, for whatever time they had left, sustained by a love that had proven stronger than fear, deeper than hardship, and more enduring than the harsh Nevada desert itself. Years passed in gentle succession. Daniel and Rosemary aged gracefully, their hair turning silver but their love remaining vibrant and strong. They watched their grandchildren grow into young adults, some choosing to stay and work the family ranches, others pursuing different dreams. Emma became a renowned educator. James's horse training operation expanded to 3 states, and Thomas took the family ranching operation to new heights of success. When Daniel was 72 and Rosemary was 68, they celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary with a massive gathering that brought family from across the West. It was a joyous occasion, but there was also a sense of gratitude, an awareness that they had been blessed with so many years together when life could have so easily gone differently. That night, alone in their bedroom after all the guests had left, Daniel and Rosemary lay in bed talking as they had done for 40 years. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had not been in Rhyolite that day?" Rosemary asked. "If you had not stepped forward?" "Every once in a while," Daniel admitted. "But then I stop myself because I cannot imagine my life without you. I do not want to imagine it." "I think about it sometimes," Rosemary said quietly. "What would have become of me? Tom Sanders would have bought me for $300. He was a cruel man. I probably would not have survived a year with him." Daniel pulled her closer, protective even after all these decades. "But that did not happen. I was there and I saw you and I could not walk away. It was the easiest and hardest decision I ever made. Easy and hard. Easy because my heart knew immediately what to do. Hard because I was giving up my dream, or so I thought. Turned out I was not giving up my dream at all. I was finding it." He kissed her forehead. "You were my dream, Rosemary. You and everything that came after. I just did not know it yet." "I love you so much," Rosemary whispered. "After 40 years, I love you more than ever." "And I love you," Daniel replied. "Always and forever." They drifted off to sleep in each other's arms, content and grateful for the life they had shared. Daniel lived to be 78 years old, remaining active on the ranch until the very end. He passed away peacefully one autumn evening, sitting on the porch watching the sunset with Rosemary beside him. One moment he was there, squeezing her hand and smiling at something one of the great-grandchildren had said. The next, he had simply slipped away, his long life coming to a gentle close. Rosemary was devastated by the loss, but she found comfort in their children and grandchildren, in the legacy they had built together, and in the memories of 46 beautiful years. She lived another 8 years after Daniel's passing, remaining sharp and engaged until the end, the matriarch of a sprawling family that now included great-great-grandchildren. On a spring morning, Rosemary passed away in her sleep at the age of 82. She was laid to rest next to Daniel on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together, their matching headstones simple but elegant. At the funeral, Thomas, now in his 60s, stood to speak about his parents. "My father always said that the best investment he ever made was spending $500 to buy my mother's freedom. But the truth is, they freed each other. My father freed my mother from a life of servitude and fear. And my mother freed my father to become the man he was meant to be, to build the life he was meant to live, to love as deeply as any person can love." Together, they created something extraordinary, not just this ranch or this family, but a testament to what is possible when two people choose love, choose courage, choose each other every single day. The family gathered around the graves as the sun set over the Nevada desert, the same desert that had witnessed the beginning of Daniel and Rosemary's story so many decades ago. And as the sky blazed with color, it seemed fitting, a final beautiful sunset for two people who had spent a lifetime watching sunsets together, always grateful for another day, another moment, another year of the extraordinary life they had built from that one brave act in a dusty town in 1907. Their story lived on in the family they had created, in the values they had instilled, in the land they had nurtured. Children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren would grow up hearing about the cowboy who bought a woman's freedom with his life savings, who saw beyond circumstances to the person beneath, who chose compassion over indifference. And in hearing that story, they would understand what their family stood for: courage, love, hard work, and the unwavering belief that one person can make a difference, that one act of kindness can change everything. The ranch continued to thrive, passed down through generations, each adding their own chapters to the family story. But at its heart, at its very foundation, was the love story of Daniel and Rosemary Zimmerman, two people who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and created something beautiful, lasting, and true. Their legacy was not just in the land or the livestock or the financial success, though all of that was impressive. Their real legacy was in the love they had shared, the family they had raised, and the example they had set of what it means to truly see another person, to act with courage and compassion, and to build a life on the foundation of genuine partnership and enduring love. And so the story ends where it began, in Rhyolite, Nevada, in the Wild West of the early 20th century, where a young woman stood on an auction block and a cowboy made a choice that changed both their lives forever. It is a story of redemption and hope, of courage and love, of two people who refused to let circumstances define them, and instead chose to define themselves through their actions, their choices, and their unwavering commitment to each other. It is, in the end, a story about the best investment anyone can ever make: investing in another person, seeing their worth when the world does not, and choosing love even when it costs everything. Because, as Daniel and Rosemary proved over 46 years of marriage, that investment pays dividends beyond measure, creating ripples that extend far beyond two lives, touching generations and proving that love, true love, is the most powerful force in the world.